Hi, my name's Felix SCULL. It's weird being on here. I mean, I've never really just spoken into a camera with no one else in the room. But I think this video could be quite therapeutic. I think there's going to be a lot of jump cuts as well, so look out for that, because I'm going to have to look things up and check times and what I'm talking about. So basically this is my story on surviving kidney disease, or specifically surviving IgA nephropathy. So I'll just get right into it. When I was about 9 years old, I was year 5 in school in England. I don't know what it is in America, which grade it is. But anyway, we were watching a presentation in class from a mountaineer. He'd climbed Everest, and he'd come in to talk to us about how he did that and how he got through it. And up until this point, I'd been a pretty happy young guy, going to a nice school in England out in the countryside. Had a really good upbringing. I'd had no problems. Never been unhealthy really, except from normal things, coughs, colds, things like that. But during this mountaineer presentation, I got the urge to go to the toilet, as you do sometimes, especially at 9, 10 years old. So I went, and it was fine, and then I came back, and less than 5 minutes later, I had to go again. And 5 minutes after that, again, and nothing, not to be too explicit, but not much was coming out. I just felt like I had to keep going over and over again. And after that, after about 5th time, 6th time, I was too embarrassed to come back into the class because everyone was looking at me. People were, you know, sort of making fun, saying, "Look, what's wrong with him?" So I went to the school nurse. They didn't know what was going on. The only illness I'd had up to that point, really, that was memorable, is I'd had a throat infection. I'd had a streptococcal throat infection, or a strep throat. And this comes in later in the story. Anyway, so everything becomes a bit of a blur after this point. I just end up going to hospital, and they're testing me, they're poking me with needles, they're taking loads of blood, urine test after urine test every single night. Every time I went to the toilet, I was testing my urine. Every time I tested it, it came back with the highest level of blood that could be in the urine without it being visible. I couldn't see blood in the urine, but it was there, and it was really there. It was alarmingly there. It was worrying the doctors, it was worrying my parents. It wasn't really worrying me, because I was a 9-year-old boy. And you know, what is it to a 9-year-old boy? I don't really understand death. I don't really understand illness. I don't understand what can hurt me and what, you know, what internally could hurt me instead of externally. I understood a broken arm, but I didn't understand internal bleeding. So there was blood in the urine, there was protein in the urine, which could be an indicator of my kidneys breaking down. And the alarming thing was this needing to go to the toilet constantly was just continuing all the time. You know, I'd had normal toilet behaviors up to that point. And during this point, you know, during this time, I just had to just go all the time. When I went to the doctors, I remember I had to go to the hospital, and they said, like, "We need you to do a urine test as soon as you come in." And they'd make me wait in the waiting room for like 10 minutes, because they wanted to get me in quick. Normally it's a long wait time in England, NHS. But yeah, they wanted to get me in really quickly. And in that time, I couldn't hold it in. I had to go to the toilet 3 times, 2 times during that 10-minute break. And it was starting to mess with me. Mentally, it was starting to mess with me. I was taking antibiotics. There was a consideration of having a biopsy, which is effectively when they put to my knowledge, I'm not a doctor, they put a metal instrument into your kidney, onto the outside of your kidney, and they remove a small bit of tissue from your kidney, and then they test that to get sort of more in-depth exploratory tests. My dad's a doctor, and he wanted that as a last resort. because he always says, you know, if we can avoid surgery, let's avoid surgery. So we held off on that, and I took loads of nasty tasting antibiotics, tastes like banana, and nothing got better. And then the lines started to blur. Up until this point, it was 100% medical. There was no question that it could also be in my head. But due to this needing to go to the toilet all the time and having these horrible situations where I'm on a 20-minute car ride and I have to go to the toilet 5 times, my dad has to pull over by the side of the road, it's really embarrassing, you know, I have to run into a pub, he has to explain what's going on, I have to go to the toilet, I get that massive relief, and then 5 minutes later I'm doing it again. You know, I would sit in the car and I would shake and I would be white and I would be like, Dad, we've got to go, we've got to stop now, please, please pull over, and I would just be shaking and so tense. And it was like I was having this medical reaction and at the same time I was having a panic attack because the fear and what would have been the embarrassment of me, you know, effectively weeing myself, you know, to put it really plainly. So that just continued, and as I was going to say, the lines started to blur. I no longer knew if I was getting anxious, and anxiety could have been the cause of me feeling like I need to go to the toilet, because your brain and your bladder are intrinsically linked, they're linked together. So, you know, a lot of people, when they get really anxious, they feel like they need to go to the toilet, or they feel sick, and it was just impossible, you couldn't tell the lines anymore. And then, as I moved to a new school, after year 5, because we moved house, it wasn't to do with this, we moved house, moved county, I ended up going to Somerset, and I started on a school there, and I spent about, I think it was 60 half days, so 30 full school days in hospital. So I was just in hospital for a lot of year 7, and it meant that I didn't really get to make many friends. And the bullies, the guys in the year, just want to say to you guys now. But anyway, those guys started to make fun of me, call me names, because I would have to get up in the middle of an assembly, a school, you know, a school meeting where the head teacher's talking, and I would have to run out of the room effectively to go to the toilet, and they just thought I was a weirdo. You know, they're kids, same as I was. I was year 7 at this point, I was maybe 12 years old. It'd been 2 years of me dealing with this, me getting so anxious, me, you know, starting to get the first stages of my depression. And these kids, you know, they call me names, they call me wee wee, they'd laugh at me, just think I was a weirdo, because I had these problems, and kids are cruel, that's what they say. And I 100% felt that. So I didn't get to make any friends. I was the kid that was sick, I was the kid that was in the hospital, I was the kid that didn't do sports, I was unhealthy, I was thin, I was white, you know, and the doctors at this point still, to this day, don't 100% know what it was. There was the diagnosis I got, or it wasn't even really a diagnosis, it was like what they thought, what all the experts, because I had so many kidney experts, I had so many different, you know, bladder experts, everything looking into me. They came to the conclusion that my throat infection, streptococcal throat infection, had then passed down into my kidneys and had sort of infected them with something. And this was IgA nephropathy, something I'd never heard of before. And I just heard that. I heard that as my kind of final thing, because I had to stop going to the hospital. There was nothing was helping me. Nothing got better. I was just, my life was rubbish. I just all day thought about my bad kidneys, thought about how everyone thought I was a weirdo, thought about how I had no friends. I had no one to talk to about it, no one liked me, no one wanted to be around me, I couldn't be around them. What if they wanted to go in the car for 20 minutes? What if they wanted to go somewhere? What if I had to go to their house and then I couldn't go to the toilet? And all these thoughts just racing through my head all the time. All the time. And yeah, so time goes forward. The kidneys seem to get better. They seem to get better, but my anxiety is just as bad. I can barely fly on a plane because I have to get up, you know, during the seatbelt signs when you're not supposed to get up, I have to get up and explain my situation. Whenever I go anywhere, my friends, it was ruining my life. I couldn't do what normal kids could do. So I just got on trying to live like that, and eventually I started going to therapy as well to treat the depression I'd started to get from not having friends, not being able to go out, not being able to socialize like a normal child. So I just I kept on going as I was, feeling bad, feeling rubbish, but the therapy was helping me a little bit. It was enabling me to externalize my feelings, enabling me to get under control of my anxiety. Because a lot of the time I get on a bus or a public transport, and at that point you can't go to the toilet. If you're in a car, someone can pull over for you, you can explain your situation. People are normally, adults are normally nice about that kind of thing. They understand, they pull over. It might be a little awkward, but it's not the end of the world. But on a bus, you can't explain that. You just shake and you're just freaking out. Anyway, to bring the story slightly forward, I, at the age of about 15, finally Googled IgA nephropathy. And it was a lot worse than I thought. Something like, don't quote me on this, but I think it was it was referred to was a lifelong end stage, meaning end of life, kidney disease. But the silver lining is that it's something you can get in your teenage years, in your young years, and about 60% of people grow out of it almost. It goes with age. Your body matures, things change inside you, and it goes away. For 60% of people. For 40% of people, their kidneys deteriorate. They have kidney failure. They might be able to live a long life, but on dialysis once a week. Getting your blood changed. Not eating certain foods, being aware of salty foods, things that can damage the kidneys, which you should already be aware of, but your whole life would change. Once again, my life would be thrown through into another spiral of depression and anxiety. And at the age of 19 to, 20, a year ago, I suddenly started looking into this again, and my head was just going a million miles an hour, and I was at my girlfriend's house, and I started just saying, I don't want to die. I think this might kill me. Most people, 40% of people with this, die young. And I was just scared. I was just really scared. I just wanted to live a normal life. And I just thought, this thing I didn't even understand as a child. Sometimes it felt like a game, getting all the tests done. This thing that I had to deal with might kill me young. I might not be able to spend more time with my girlfriend. I might not be able to say things I want to say to my parents. I might die before everyone else. And there was a lot of why me? Why does this happen to happen to me? Of course, it's a selfish thought. You shouldn't think like that, but you do. If you're a young person, you think, I've got this whole life ahead of me and this has happened. So I had stopped doing the urine tests I was supposed to be doing for the last 5 years. I was supposed to be doing them, but I'd stopped doing them because every time I'd done them, up to the last test I did, it had the most, I think it was 4 out of 4 blood in the urine, 2 out of 4 protein, and that was like the worst. It was really bad. My kidneys looked like they were falling apart the last time I checked. I eventually, because I was so scared, I called my parents and I spoke to my mum, got quite emotional. I was angry, I was upset, not at her, just at the situation, how things were going. So I decided I would get a full test done on my local doctor's surgery, a full panel blood test where they'd see all the values, they'd see every part of my kidney function. And at this point, just to say, I was still getting this fear about needing the toilet, but it felt more like a fear than a medical thing, but it's so hard to distinguish between the two. So I thought there was something still wrong with me, and I went and got this blood test. They printed the results out for me a couple days later, and I was shaking, almost crying, as I read the results, and every single value was normal. Effectively, I was cured. I got in the 60% of people who get away from it. The people that, survive it and don't have to go on dialysis. And the relief I felt from that is so hard to explain. It was just this weight off my shoulders that I carried since I was 9 years old, 11 years before, had finally been resolved. And the anxiety of me feeling like I need to get up and go to the toilet and explain my situation to people and explain, hey, when I meet someone, I have to go, hey, I've got this kidney problem, I might need to get up. And they're like, yeah, that's fine. I didn't have to say that anymore. And I could finally start working on the anxiety fully. And here I am, 21 years old now. And I'm still going. My kidneys are fine. Every part of my body is fine. There is no sign of illness. And I'm really thankful, I'd just like to say I'm really thankful to all the experts, all the NHS staff, all the specialists, my parents especially, my parents, for, they had to go through this with me. I'm their child. They had to go through all this trauma alongside me. And I'd like to shout out my friend John too, because he knew what I was going through more than most people, and he stuck by my side. He wasn't one of the ones that just ditched me. And all the friends I've had since, they know about this. They know what I went through. They understand it. They don't judge me when I still feel a bit anxious sometimes, and I feel like I've got to go to the toilet. That bit is still inside me, deep inside my brain, but I can separate from it now. I can kind of understand it a bit more. So that's all I wanted to say. Just want to explain that. If anyone else is going through it, anyone else has suffered with childhood illnesses, I got really lucky. I'm not ever going to say I wasn't lucky, because I could have gone either way. I really appreciate you for listening, and I'd also like to say, for a first video, that was one take.